What if I told you that everything you think you know about attraction is wrong? That the things most men chase, looks, money, charm, are actually the smallest part of what makes someone irresistible? What if I told you that older men, men who most people write off as too old or past their prime, have secrets that younger men don't even know exist, secrets that make them magnetic, desirable, and impossible to ignore? And the crazy part, these aren't tricks, these aren't hacks, these aren't cheap pick-up lines or flashy moves. These are habits, deep psychological life-shaping habits that completely transform how the world sees a man. By the end of this video, you're going to realize why some older men walk into a room and instantly command attention without saying a single word. You're going to understand why people, women, men, even strangers, instinctively respect them, gravitate toward them, and remember them long after they leave. You're going to discover the hidden forces that make a man attractive, forces most men ignore their whole lives. And you're going to see how simple it is to start cultivating them today. If you think attractiveness is just about youth or looks, you're about to be shocked. If you think confidence can be faked or learned from a quick trick, you're about to be proven wrong. By the time this video ends, you'll know why presence, self-mastery, standards, and long-term thinking are not just traits. They're magnets that pull respect, admiration, and desire toward a man effortlessly. So stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal is something almost no one talks about, something that will change the way you see yourself and the way the world sees you forever. There is something incredibly magnetic about a man who has learned the power of presence, not loudness, not dominance, not physical perfection, presence. When an older man enters a room with quiet confidence, people notice without even understanding why. It isn't about height, looks, money, or social status. It's about the way he exists in his own body, the way he carries his energy, the way he occupies space without forcing anything. Presence is not a performance. It's a state of being. And the older men who master this, the ones who appear effortlessly attractive, understand something most people never learn. You don't become noticeable by trying to be seen. You become noticeable by being grounded. In a world where everyone is rushing, reacting, competing, and craving attention, the rare man who is calm becomes magnetic. The rare man who is quiet becomes powerful. The rare man who is unbothered becomes unforgettable. Presence begins with self-awareness. Older men who have lived, who have failed, who have rebuilt themselves, they understand their emotional temperature. They know when they're anxious. They know when they're angry. They know when their mind is scattered. And instead of letting these emotions leak through their body language, they regulate them. Most people underestimate how much of attraction is nonverbal. Younger men often think attractiveness is created through lines, tactics, or charm. But attractive older men know it's something deeper. It's the way they breathe, the way they pause before speaking, the way they listen without rushing, the way they move with intention rather than impulse. This is presence. It signals inner stability. It signals maturity. It signals that this man is not controlled by external chaos. And people, especially women, feel that instantly. Younger women often describe older men as safe, calming, or different. That feeling doesn't come from age itself. It comes from presence. A man who is present is not distracted. He is not looking around to see who's watching him. He is not seeking validation. He is not trying to win approval. He is rooted. When he talks from clarity, not insecurity. When he makes eye contact, he holds it without trying to dominate, but without looking away either. When he stands straight, not to impress, but because he respects himself enough to take up space. These small, subtle signals combine into something powerful: respect without demand, confidence without arrogance. Presence also grows from one more thing: slowness. Not laziness, not lack of ambition, but slowness in behavior, in speech, and in reactions. An attractive older man understands the value of pacing himself. He doesn't jump to answer. He doesn't rush to respond. He gives his mind time to process, and his calmness gives others confidence. People trust slow, steady energy because it feels less reactive and more intentional. When you slow down your movements, people lean in. When you slow down your speech, they listen longer. When you slow down your expression, they feel your seriousness. Younger men often speed up to hide insecurity. Older, attractive men slow down because they have nothing to prove. Another layer of presence comes from composure. Everyone experiences pressure, but not everyone can remain centered within it. Older men who are attractive have learned this through experience. They've lived through moments where losing their temper cost them relationships, opportunities, or respect. And at some point, they realize something important: power isn't shown by reacting, it's shown by not reacting. When a man stays composed under stress, people naturally follow his lead, and that leadership is quietly attractive. Women admire it, men respect it, even strangers sense it. Composure makes a man's presence feel like a form of emotional shelter, and when your presence feels like shelter, you become rare. Presence also comes from silence, not awkward silence, but intentional silence. Attractive older men don't fill every second with talking. They allow space. They let others speak. They let ideas breathe. Silence is misunderstood in the modern world because people are uncomfortable with it. But silence is one of the highest forms of confidence. When an older man stays silent, it tells the world, I don't need to fight for attention. I don't need to occupy your mind. If what I say matters, you'll hear it. Silence is not emptiness. It's self-control, and when combined with maturity, it becomes a signature trait of unforgettable men. Another crucial part of presence is awareness of your environment. Attractive older men are observant. They notice details, body language, tone shifts, energy changes. Awareness makes them more grounded, and groundedness makes them more attractive. People feel understood around a man who pays attention. They relax. They trust him. They feel seen. Attention is a form of respect, and respect creates attraction without trying. There's also a physical side to presence. Older men who are attractive don't move nervously. They don't fidget. They don't constantly check their phone. Their body language is stable, controlled, and intentional. When they sit with structure. When they walk, their steps are confident. When they talk, their gestures are measured. Physical composure communicates discipline. It communicates emotional maturity. It communicates experience. It communicates that this man has lived long enough to know who he is, and no external force can shake that identity. Another aspect is eye contact. Not staring, not aggressive, but grounded eye contact. Attractive older men look at you with intention. They're not scanning the room. They're not distracted by every passing moment. Their eye contact says, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm engaged. And that kind of attention is rare. People crave it. They remember the man who gave it to them. Presence also comes from something deeper, peace with your past. Older men who have unresolved pain, regret, or bitterness often carry tension in their shoulders, their voice, their reactions. Attractive older men have processed their past. They've forgiven themselves. They've learned from their failures. They've accepted what they can't change, and that emotional peace radiates through their presence. When a man has made peace with his history, he walks differently. He breathes differently. He lives differently. Peace is attractive because chaos is exhausting. And perhaps the most underrated part of presence is authenticity. Attractive older men don't pretend. They don't shift to impress. They don't dilute themselves to be liked. They show up as they are, and authenticity, especially in older men, is powerful because it's rare. Most people mask their insecurities. Most people try to be what society expects. But a man who has lived long enough eventually realizes something. The world respects the man who respects his own truth. Presence is not about being perfect. It's not about having perfect posture, perfect voice, or perfect rhythm. Presence is about alignment. It's when your inner world and outer behavior match, when there is no conflict between what you feel and what you show, when your calmness is real, not forced, when you walk with purpose because you know who you are. And the moment a man reaches this stage, age becomes irrelevant. Experience becomes attractive, silence becomes powerful, stillness becomes magnetic, and presence becomes his most seductive quality. Here's the final thought to carry with you. A man becomes truly attractive the moment he stops performing and starts being. There's a certain kind of confidence that only becomes possible when a man understands himself on a deeper level. Not the surface level confidence that comes from compliments or achievements or temporary motivation, but the quiet, unshakable confidence that grows from self-mastery. When an older man develops emotional clarity, discipline, and inner stability, something shifts in the way he behaves. His presence stops being reactive and becomes intentional. His words stop being defensive and become measured, and the way people perceive him changes almost immediately. Because the truth is, nothing is more attractive than a man who has learned to control himself instead of trying to control the world around him. Younger men often chase confidence through external things, appearance, attention, material success. But attractive older men know something younger men rarely understand. Lasting confidence begins internally, and everything else is just an extension of that inner state. They've lived long enough to see how unstable the world can be. They've experienced moments where emotional impulsiveness cost them relationships, opportunities, or peace of mind. And through all of those moments, they eventually reached a point where they realized that true power is not found in being stronger than others, but in being stronger than their own impulses. Self-mastery begins with awareness. A man who knows his weaknesses is far more powerful than a man who hides them. Attractive older men are not afraid to look directly at their flaws. They don't pretend to be fearless or perfect or invincible. They study their patterns. They take accountability for their mistakes. They know their triggers, whether it's anger, insecurity, or impatience. And instead of letting those triggers control them, they learn to understand them. This level of emotional precision is rare. Most people don't think about why they feel what they feel. They just react. But older men who become emotionally magnetic are the ones who take a step back and ask themselves, what is actually happening inside me right now? This internal questioning creates clarity, and clarity leads to control. Control leads to confidence. Confidence leads to attraction. There's something deeply compelling about a man who doesn't collapse under emotional pressure. The ability to stay grounded when life becomes chaotic is a form of leadership, and leadership is naturally attractive. It tells people, this man knows what he's doing. He knows where he's going. He knows how to handle himself. And in a world full of noise and unpredictability, that level of emotional stability feels like a safe place. Self-mastery also means a man no longer competes with others. He competes with himself. Attractive older men are not jealous of other men. They're not threatened by youth, success, or attention. They don't measure their worth through comparison because they understand something crucial. No one else is living their life. No one else has their story, their experience, their path. This kind of emotional maturity makes them calm in a way that younger men often struggle to understand. They don't need to win every argument. They don't need to prove their superiority. They don't need to announce their achievements. Their growth is personal, not performative. This internal orientation makes their confidence feel genuine rather than manufactured. When a man is truly confident, people can sense it without him having to advertise it. Self-mastery also affects the way an older man communicates. Attractive older men don't speak to impress. They speak to express, and they speak with clarity. When they talk, there's a simplicity to their language. They don't exaggerate. They don't over-explain. They don't rush to fill silence. They choose their words carefully, and because of that, their words carry weight. The energy behind what they say is controlled, intentional, grounded. Even when they disagree with someone, their disagreement is measured rather than emotional. They don't try to win a conversation, they try to understand it, and that maturity makes their presence mentally attractive. One of the most powerful aspects of self-mastery is emotional discipline. Younger men often view discipline as a punishment or restriction, but attractive older men understand it as freedom. Discipline is what protects a man from self-destruction. Discipline is what keeps him focused when temptation appears. Discipline is what allows him to maintain dignity in moments when his emotional impulses want him to do the opposite. When a man has disciplined himself, his habits, his reactions, his lifestyle, he becomes a rare force. Because most people in the world today are guided by impulse, not intention. The man who is guided by intention stands out immediately. This discipline extends into how they handle conflict. Attractive older men don't explode easily. They don't insult unnecessarily. They don't engage in emotional outbursts. They've learned that anger is often a mask for deeper feelings: fear, pain, rejection. And instead of projecting those emotions outward, they've learned to process them internally. They've learned to pause before reacting. They've learned to let silence do the heavy lifting. They've learned that not every attack needs a response, and not every wound needs to be shown. That control creates a sense of mystery, stability, and respect. Self-mastery also means a man has learned to discipline his desires. Most men get destroyed not because of lack of intelligence, but because of lack of control over desire. Whether it's desire for validation, desire for attention, desire for distraction, or desire for pleasure. Attractive older men understand that desire without discipline leads to chaos. They've seen it, they've experienced it, they've learned from it. So instead of letting desire control them, they choose which desires deserve their energy. That choice is what gives them strength. This level of self-control affects relationships in a powerful way. Younger men often chase affection, approval, or intimacy from a place of emotional neediness. But older men with self-mastery don't chase. They connect. They don't cling. They choose. They are not desperate for validation because they've already validated themselves. They don't need someone to tell them who they are. They already know. And that certainty is extremely attractive. It feels safe. It feels stable. It feels mature. Self-mastery also makes a man less reactive to the opinions of others. Attractive older men don't allow criticism to shake them. They don't allow gossip to change them. They don't let disrespect pull them out of character. They know that dignity is a reflection of discipline. They know that self-respect doesn't need an audience. They know that confidence isn't measured by how many people approve of them, but by how much they approve of themselves. And here's what makes all of this truly magnetic: people instinctively trust a man who is in control of himself. They trust his decisions. They trust his energy. They trust the stability he represents. Because a man who has mastered himself becomes someone others feel guided by, protected by, and inspired by. The truth is simple. A man can only be as powerful in the world as he is powerful within himself. And the older men who become truly attractive, the ones who leave a lasting impact, are the ones who have taken full responsibility for their inner world. Carry this with you. The man who masters himself becomes the man everyone else looks toward. There's a subtle but incredibly powerful force that separates men who are merely present from men who are genuinely magnetic, and that force is standards, not rules imposed on others, not rigid dogmas, not a superficial checklist of behaviors. I'm talking about the kind of standards that come from self-respect, from understanding your worth, from refusing to allow life to treat you as optional. Attractive older men understand that the way you allow others to treat you sets the tone for every interaction you have. They've lived enough to see the consequences of compromising themselves, of bending too far to please, of tolerating behaviors that diminish their dignity. And they've made a choice. They will no longer settle for less than they deserve. This doesn't mean they are inflexible or arrogant. On the contrary, their standards are not about controlling others. They are about defining the space in which they operate. When a man has clear standards, he communicates something vital without a single word. I know my value, and I will not negotiate it. That energy is magnetic because it signals stability, clarity, and self-respect. People are instinctively drawn to it because most men lack it. Most men compromise too early. They apologize for themselves, shrink to fit into expectations, and then wonder why they feel invisible or disrespected. Attractive older men never make this mistake because they've learned the hard way that boundaries are not limitations. They are the framework of attraction. Attractive older men set standards in every area of life: relationships, work, social interactions, even how they allow others to speak to them. In relationships, standards mean that they don't tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or inconsistency. They understand that true intimacy requires mutual respect, not neediness. They have experienced relationships where boundaries were ignored, where compromise came at the cost of self-respect. From those experiences, they have learned that standards are not obstacles to connection. They are the gateway. When you know what you will accept and what you will not, people feel the security of your clarity. They are drawn to it. Women, in particular, sense when a man has a framework for how he is treated, and that framework creates attraction far beyond physical appearance. Setting standards also communicates strength without aggression. You don't need to force respect. You earn it by standing firm in your principles. There is a subtle psychological power in this. Most people respond to men who hold themselves accountable, who demand the minimum of respect, and who maintain that expectation consistently. The energy it creates is irresistible because it's rare. In a world full of men who bend to please, the man who doesn't bend becomes the standard by which others are measured. These standards are not only external, they are internal as well. Attractive older men hold themselves to a higher level of integrity, discipline, and purpose. They know that standards aren't just about what you allow from others. They are also about what you demand from yourself. This is what creates alignment between words, actions, and values. When a man holds himself accountable, his energy resonates differently. People trust him because they see that he is consistent, reliable, and authentic. Standards without self-accountability are hollow. They are rules without meaning. But when standards are backed by personal discipline, they become magnetic. Attractive older men also understand the importance of patience when enforcing standards. They don't compromise instantly, but they also don't act out of impatience or pride. They wait for the right circumstances and the right people who are willing to meet them on their terms. There's wisdom in this. Impatience creates compromise, and compromise without consideration erodes value. The men who have cultivated standards know that every interaction is a reflection of their self-respect, and that patience is a way of protecting it. Another layer of standards is emotional discernment. Attractive older men know that not everyone deserves their energy. They have learned to conserve their attention, their time, and their emotional investment for people who genuinely deserve it. They are selective, but not elitist. They don't waste energy on drama, on shallow conversations, or on manipulation. They have learned that attraction is not about being available to everyone. It is about being selectively present for those who truly matter. This selectivity creates intrigue, respect, and desire because people unconsciously recognize that someone who is discerning cannot be taken lightly. Standards also translate into decisiveness. When a man knows what he will accept, he doesn't hesitate in making choices. He doesn't overanalyze or doubt himself because he has already internalized the principles that guide him. This decisiveness is incredibly attractive because it signals leadership, clarity, and purpose. Women especially sense when a man is a decision maker versus a man who is reactive. A man who consistently enforces his standards communicates reliability, strength, and vision without ever needing to declare it aloud. It's also important to understand that standards are not static, they evolve. Attractive older men don't cling blindly to old rules or outdated habits. They refine their standards as they grow, as they learn, and as they experience life. This flexibility within a framework of self-respect is what makes them both formidable and approachable. People respect a man who evolves without losing his core integrity because it demonstrates both wisdom and resilience. Attractive older men understand a crucial principle: boundaries create freedom. The more clearly you define what is acceptable, the more liberated you become. You are no longer trapped by the expectations of others. You are no longer subject to manipulation or coercion. You no longer allow your value to be dictated externally. Instead, you move through the world on your own terms, and that movement creates energy that is impossible to ignore. Standards, in essence, are a declaration of sovereignty, an invisible signal that this man is in charge of himself, and anyone who wishes to engage with him must respect that. Finally, standards generate respect not just outwardly but inwardly. When a man refuses to compromise on what matters, he strengthens his own self-perception. He reinforces the message that he is worthy, that he is capable, and that he is deserving of the highest form of treatment. That self-perception radiates outward, and it is felt by everyone around him. People are not drawn merely to a man's appearance. They are drawn to the alignment between his inner world and outer reality. Standards create that alignment. Standards create integrity. Standards create attraction that cannot be faked. So, when you think about the older men who leave a lasting impression, who draw attention effortlessly, who command respect without trying, understand this: it is not charm alone, it is not wealth alone, it is not even confidence alone. It is the quiet, unwavering enforcement of standards that communicate value at every level. These standards are invisible forces that shape the way people respond to him, the way women perceive him, the way the world bends around him. And most men never understand this because they confuse compromise with kindness and submission with humility. Attractive older men do not make that mistake. They have learned that real respect is earned by holding firm, by honoring themselves, and by refusing to settle for mediocrity in any form. Carry this truth with you: a man's attractiveness is measured not by how much he tolerates, but by what he refuses to compromise. There is a quality that separates men who simply live from men who leave a mark, a quality that cannot be bought, cannot be faked, and cannot be rushed. It is long-term thinking. Attractive older men do not operate from impulse. They do not make decisions solely based on immediate gratification or fleeting emotions. They see life as a series of interconnected moments, and every choice they make is measured against the bigger picture. They think in decades, not hours. They plan with vision, not just reaction. And this long-term perspective is what gives them a gravity that younger men often lack. It is a force that makes people trust them, respect them, and, yes, find them irresistibly attractive. Long-term thinking begins with understanding cause and effect. Attractive older men have lived enough to see the consequences of short-sighted choices. They've made mistakes that cost them opportunities, relationships, or peace of mind. They've witnessed how impulsive decisions can derail plans and damage reputations. From these experiences, they develop foresight. They anticipate outcomes. They evaluate actions not only for the immediate result, but for their ripple effects years down the line. This perspective allows them to operate with a calm confidence that younger men, focused on the now, simply cannot achieve. They understand that time is the most valuable currency. Young men often spend it recklessly, chasing validation, pleasure, or temporary excitement. Attractive older men treat it as a resource that cannot be wasted. Every hour, every interaction, every investment is considered in terms of long-term benefit. They understand that patience is not a weakness, it is a form of power. They know that delayed gratification, careful planning, and disciplined action compound into results that are far greater than any short-term gain. This mastery over time creates a sense of inevitability around them. People sense that when this man acts, it is not random, it is deliberate, it is calculated with wisdom. And that inevitability is magnetic. Long-term thinking also shapes the way these men view relationships. They do not chase fleeting attention or validation. They invest in people who align with their vision, who respect their values, and who contribute positively to their life trajectory. They are selective, not because they are arrogant, but because they understand the cost of investing their energy poorly. They know that each relationship, each connection, has a compound effect on their emotional and social ecosystem. They cultivate bonds that grow stronger over time, that build trust, loyalty, and mutual respect. This kind of intentionality in relationships is rare, and it signals maturity, stability, and depth, all of which are deeply attractive. Long-term thinkers also manage their resources differently. They understand the power of strategic planning in wealth, health, and personal growth. While younger men may seek instant success or immediate recognition, attractive older men plan for sustainability and legacy. They take care of their bodies not because they fear aging, but because they understand that health compounds over time. They invest financially not for status, but for security and freedom. They cultivate skills not for fleeting popularity, but for lifelong relevance and competence. Every choice is intentional, every effort contributes to a broader vision, and that level of foresight radiates confidence and stability. People sense when a man is building a future rather than scrambling for the present. Another dimension of long-term thinking is strategic patience. Attractive older men understand the rhythm of opportunity. They know when to act, when to wait, and when to observe. They are not impulsive, and they do not force outcomes. They understand that timing is a critical factor in success, influence, and attraction. Acting too early or too late can diminish results, but acting with precision creates impact. Women, in particular, sense this energy. They are drawn to men who can navigate life with discernment, who can take decisive action without being hurried, who can balance ambition with patience. This kind of calculated approach conveys mastery over both self and circumstance. Long-term thinking also shapes a man's emotional resilience. Older men who plan for the future are less likely to be swayed by temporary setbacks or criticisms. They understand that obstacles are part of a larger trajectory and that short-term failures do not define their life's direction. This resilience communicates strength and stability. People instinctively trust a man who can maintain composure under pressure because they recognize that his perspective is rooted in the long term rather than the immediate. Resilience and patience together create a magnetic calmness that is profoundly attractive. Long-term thinkers also cultivate a sense of vision and purpose. Attractive older men do not live passively, they live intentionally. They have goals that extend beyond today, beyond social approval, beyond superficial gains. They are guided by principles that shape decisions consistently over time. This vision provides clarity in all areas of life, from career to relationships to personal growth. And that clarity communicates direction, purpose, and leadership. Women and people in general are drawn to men who have a clear path because it signals competence, stability, and emotional security. People feel safer, inspired, and motivated around men who think beyond the immediate. The effect of long-term thinking on confidence cannot be overstated. Confidence is not simply the result of good looks or charm. It is the byproduct of preparation, foresight, and consistent action. When a man knows that his life is being built intentionally, that each choice compounds toward a meaningful outcome, his presence carries an almost palpable certainty. He does not second-guess himself because he trusts the trajectory he is on. That self-assurance is deeply attractive because it signals reliability, vision, and internal security. It is an energy that is felt, not just observed. Long-term thinking also creates a rare form of attractiveness through emotional composure. Men who operate with vision and foresight are less likely to react impulsively to jealousy, competition, or societal pressures. They do not feel the need to prove themselves at every turn. They do not chase validation or succumb to insecurity. Their energy is steady, controlled, and intentional. That steadiness is a signal of emotional maturity, which is far more magnetic than superficial charm. People instinctively recognize that someone who is emotionally anchored and strategically minded is someone worth following, respecting, and admiring. Finally, long-term thinking allows men to live without regret. Older men who cultivate this habit make decisions not based on short-term impulses, but on principles and vision. They understand that life is a series of compounding moments, and that integrity, foresight, and purpose produce results far beyond the superficial. They measure their success not by instant recognition, but by sustained impact. And that impact is what makes them unforgettable. Their lives are not chaotic or reactive. They are intentional, meaningful, and magnetic. So, when we look at older men who draw attention without effort, who command respect without force, who radiate a quiet power, understand this. It is not luck, it is not appearance, it is not age. It is the habit of thinking long-term, of living with vision, of acting with patience and purpose, of planning with foresight. It is the habit of constructing life as a legacy rather than a moment. That is what separates men who simply exist from men who are truly magnetic. Carry this thought with you, because it is simple but profound. The man who thinks in decades, not days, builds an aura of inevitability that is impossible to ignore.